Hey there, good people, and welcome back to the DNP podcast. I'm your host, Deb Agbidet, and I'm ready for what the off-season has in store. The draft is last week, and I'm going to give my winners and losers in the aftermath of all the selections made over last weekend. This pod is available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, so like, rate, subscribe, and all that good stuff so you can stay up to date with each upload. Okay, so we'll start off with the winners, and what a better place to kick off this segment with the team that kicked off the draft entirely with making the first overall pick, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders selecting what, I've waxed lyrical about in multiple episodes in the past, and that is, picking up Fernando Mendoza, quarterback out of Indiana, who, you've seen like the interviews and, the media that he's done, and you just sense that, okay, this is a guy who, has at least the mental makeup from outside looking in of a future franchise guy for a Raiders team that, has, Brady in the office and brings in Clint Kubiak and has John Spytek, who comes from the Bucks, which was, a winning organization during his tenure there. So you look at it and you say, yeah, this is like picking up a franchise quarterback. Like, what greater win is that in the draft? And not just to see the Mendoza pick, which is, the one pick, but being able to get like a Stooks and a McCoy to shore up your secondary, which had a lot of questions going into, well, just off the back of last season, how they performed, and especially McCoy, who obviously has the injury concern, which is why he drops from a mocked highly, and even I did, right, first round guy to the top of the fourth. But being able to get the first round talent in the fourth, and a kind of widely understood first round talent in that's just peak value, in getting that sort of value at the fourth round on day three. Kind of gives you to like, okay, this is a team that's building a roster in a smart way, in a way to kind of get as many good players in a team that lacked good players last season, to kick on and start the Kubiak era in the right way. It'll be interesting to see whether Mendoza starts week one, because obviously they signed Kirk Cousins not too long ago. They gave him a deal which indicates that, okay, if things go well, we'll give you a good tenure. But in all honesty, when you draft a quarterback number one overall, like, that is a big indicator that, heck, if he's good enough and ready to go, we're going to put him in as soon as possible, because the best way to get better in any form of any industry, anything in life really, is to do it and get the reps in, and go out there and make mistakes and learn from them, because otherwise you're just going to be left in the lurch and not really knowing what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. So in this case, for sure, it'd be interesting to see whether Mendoza starts week one. I personally would, because again, number one overall pick, get the reps in, as I've just said. Like, even though you sign Kirk, who's gonna be a great mentor for him, and obviously has large amounts of experience playing the quarterback position in the NFL, so having that sort of mentor and someone who's coming in knowing he's the mentor, unlike his tenure in Atlanta, where it's obviously Penix picked as a surprise, and that's kind of a whole controversial situation. Trust me, I know I supported that team and still support that team, but watched how that ended up blowing up in Atlanta's faces and getting people fired at the end of the day. But in all honesty, focus on the Raiders, getting the good a number of players, getting the Thunder to Genty's Lightning as well, and Mike Washington. I definitely think the Raiders are certainly a team that, from pre-draft to post-draft, got a hell of a lot better than some other teams could have in this same situation. The second winner I've got is the Cleveland Browns. Again, it's a team that it feels like almost every year, picks well, but because you've had that Deshaun Watson contract and trade was giving up the first round picks, it's kind of held the team back from being able to be good or even be solid. You know, they've been picking near the top of a lot of the drafts in recent years, and you know, you'd hope that, you know, this draft, with obviously Deshaun's contract hopefully being on the backside, you know, next year, because they did kick the can down the road, essentially, the quarterback position, with only the pick being made in the 6th round for Taylor Green. But you trade down, you get extra capital, you get Spencer Fano on the offensive line, which, you know, they've invested a lot in the offseason, which they needed to, because they had a lot of departures in that position group. But getting Spencer Fano, you know, good solid tackle, first tackle off the board, so at least you get first pick in that sense. You double up in receiver, you get Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston, which, you know, considering the receiving core, the receiving core, the offensive weaponry on the Browns roster, that was definitely a position group that needed a lot of investment. And getting first round pick on Concepcion, and a second round pick on Denzel Boston, and then the next second round pick being able to pick up, you know, someone, the archetype of, you know, your Nick Emenwar's, your Cooper DeJean's, just that nickel do-it-all player, which I feel every good defense has a sort of hybrid linebacker safety type guy that can get moved around and be a real chess piece on that defensive side of the ball. Getting Emmanuel McNeil-Warren at pick 58, when, you know, many were projecting him, you know, consensus would tell you that he was a first round guy, and you're getting him at the back end of the second round. That's definitely something that you can point to and say, okay, yeah, the Browns, again, got good value, got a ton of good players in the team to help them improve and move forward in the right way. It's just about getting that quarterback position right and ready. And, you know, you've gotten Deshaun Watson back off an Achilles, you obviously Shedeur Sanders, and what happens with him. You have Dylan Gabriel behind them. It's like, yeah, like that's a kind of a bit of a mess, and you know, get the whole circus that was the head coaching search of like, oh, all these people kind of hanging back saying we don't really want the Cleveland job. Then you end up with Todd Monken. We'll see how he's able to do with, you know, this opportunity and getting this Cleveland team to be respectable and kind of move the monkey off the back of just being the Cleveland Browns, which has a heavy stigma to it. But I'd definitely say this draft is, again, another way of getting good talent in the team to supplant Myles Garrett with hopefully an opportunity to compete off of a Defensive Player of the Year and record-breaking sack season. So, you know, it's better that, you know, Cleveland are a good team, except for one game next season, because the Falcons do have to go to Cleveland next season, especially with Kevin Stefanski at the helm. I'm sure they'll be extra motivated for that game. But aside from that, I think this is definitely a draft class for Cleveland that you could say they can kick on, and next year, if they are in a position to get a quarterback, they could say that we've got the roster around you and the division potentially that you can compete and then come in and hit the ground running, essentially. So I'd say Cleveland are another winner in that regard. And my third winner, which I'm kind of cheating with because it's actually a whole division, and it is the NFC South, because I think if you look at draft classes across the whole division, you'd say that there was value to be had in every single team's selections over the course of last weekend. I mean, first up, Ruben Bain at 15. Jesus, like, that is unbelievable. I know there was a lot of chat about the fact that he had short arms and that would hamper him being able to come into the league, but trust, like, I watched that national championship runner-up run, the playoff run, and Ruben Bain was just a mauler, just attacking everyone. Everyone was having issues with him, and these are the best lines, the best teams, and the best teams in college football have the best lines of scrimmage, and Ruben Bain was definitely a standout player in those games. And the fact that he's dropping to 15, because that is fully dropping to that point in the draft, you'd say, okay, yeah, the Bucks team that has struggled with pass rush in recent years gets a guy that can step in and be there for the years to come. You have the story with the Falcons and Avion Terrell pairing up with his older brother AJ in that secondary, and getting a pick 48, which again was a consensus first round pick in a lot of the mocks you find leading up to the process. And again, first round guy, pick 48, middle of the round. That is getting good value. And then you tack on Zechariah Branch in the third. That is definitely someone who can be a guy in the slot of speed, so that can get the ball, bunch of yak, make people miss, and in a receiver room that truly needed it after you move on Darnell Mooney, and after Drake London, you really were questioning that receiver room in Atlanta. So getting Zachariah Branch again is another good piece to have. You look at Carolina, you get Monroe Freeling at pick 19, you get Lee Hunter, you get Chris Brazell. Like, again, the Panthers, who NFC South champs, whatever you want to say about the fact that they were 8 and 9, that you look at, they are building a roster in the right way. You look at Jalen Phillips and Devin Lloyd in free agency, and as I said, I believe in my free agency review, the Panthers will go as far as Bryce Young can take them, because I think that roster really has been built in a great way and will be a real threat moving forward in the NFC South. And then the Saints as well, because you get Jordan Tyson, you get Christian Miller, Oscar Delp, Bryce Lance. There's a ton of good picks, good players for the Saints. And just one little question I'd have is that you've got Chris Olave and Jordan Tyson as great wide receivers, no doubt, but have injury concerns, the both of them, in the recent years. So obviously the hope is with Tyler Shuck that you could have those guys fit and be a real fit and firing offense, especially with Travis Etienne in the backfield. And that is just a team that I think, the whole division, I'm going to plant the flag here. The NFC South are going to have another 8 and 9 division champ in the 2026 season. If anything, they're not going to have a 9-8 one either. It's going to be 10 and up. It's going to take a really good team to actually step up and be win the division and be a playoff team that represents this division, and not just being the lapping boys that get handed a playoff game at home and have to rewrite the rules of why do division winners have to be hosting a playoff game, because clearly the NFC South champ doesn't deserve a home game because they're all dog water. Well, not this year, not in 2026. Mark my words, NFC South is going to be a competitive division in 2026. And a competitive division because the teams are good, not just because they're equally mediocre. But those are my draft winners. LV, Las Vegas Raiders, Cleveland Browns, and the whole NFC South division. Right, now on to my losers for the 2026 draft. And I initially planned on having 3 losers, but I'll honorable mention them. The Miami Dolphins, thought the Caden Proctor pick at 12 was an interesting one, and then news coming out in recent days that they drafted him as a tackle, they plan on playing him as an offensive guard. And I feel like, okay, if you're drafting a guy to be a guard for the first recent years, why not just draft Ioane, who doesn't have the discipline concerns that Caden Proctor has? And in a city like Miami, you feel like you should probably make sure that these guys are going to be able to keep themselves at the right weight, which is the concerned for Caden Proctor and never been to Miami, but I've heard they have pretty good food there. So if you're having a guy who's got concerns for being able to maintain his peak physical weight, if you're in a city like Miami, you have to make sure that you've got the guardrails in place to make sure that he is fully focused on football and being at his best shape on the field. But Chris Johnson is a good pick. Could be just because the guy played a non-power conference. I mean, you've seen Quinn mention in recent years play in Toledo and come in and be an instant impact for a team that goes into the Super Bowl. I think Chris Johnson's a good player. Draft Jacob Rodriguez in the second round as well. Yeah, Chris Bell later on as well, who was very much looking like a first round guy before tearing his ACL at Louisville. So I think there's a bit of benefit of the doubt that I'll put on the Miami Dolphins to not call them a full on draft loser, at least with the two teams that I've got here. And the first proper loser I have is the Arizona Cardinals, because what on earth are they doing? I mean, you have James Conner, you have Trey Benson, he drafted day 2 on the roster. You sign Tyler Algier, who is obviously coming with the expectation that he's going to be the starting runner back, because he's just come from a team in Atlanta that has Bijan Robinson ahead of him. And despite having 1,000 yards in his rookie year in Tyler Algier, he was able to sit back and play a heavy role with Bijan Robinson ahead of him. And you think, okay, great. Contract's expiring. I've done a good job here in Atlanta. Great. Thank you for everything you've done for me, drafting me, giving me a chance in the NFL, all that sort of good stuff. I'm going to go somewhere and be a star. And he goes to Arizona, gets paid, $6 million, which, obviously not going to feel bad about the guy getting paid. But, I mean, the fact that he's, I'd imagine, gone with the pretense of, I'm coming in to be a starter in this team. And then all of a sudden you feel, wait a minute, we really like this Jeremiah Love guy. And fair play, he's obviously a good player. He's had, great success in Notre Dame in college. Like that, he is a great player, no doubt. But, already investing a fair amount in the running back room, and then on top of that, drafting Jeremiah Love at 3rd overall, which I'm not even going to go up about the running back value or he's getting the most guaranteed money at the running back position, so this is a bad pick for that reason. I'm purely going from a roster building standpoint of like, dude, you signed Tyler Algier, you have James Conner coming back from injury, you've got running backs in the room that you have played and have played to a serviceable, and Algier has played to a good level in my opinion, and then you're now drafting Jeremiah Love. I just think that it's just kind of poor roster building in that sense. And then Carson Beck in the 3rd round is I don't know, I feel like if I was a Cardinals fan I'd be kind of uninspired, even though again Jeremiah Love, great player. It just feels like maybe move on. If you're gonna have a Love Algier partnership, maybe let Algier know that baked in coming in, or also James Conner, and move him on if you're going to if you're gonna bring in another running back, or who else is there? There's Trey Benson. Yeah, just feels like there's just not a lot of coherence in that organization at the minute. And when you've got the Rams, the Seahawks, the Niners in that division, it just feels like there needs to be a bit more of a plan that is well thought out, and you're seeing through, and not just, oh hey, well, we like Algier, that's good. Oh, Jeremiah Love's actually solid and great, like let's draft him now too. So I don't know, I just feel like Arizona haven't really thought out in the right way to build a team moving forward. And heck, maybe they are just saying, you know what, punt this year again. Let's look at 2027 and that draft class and just hopefully bottom out to get Arch or Dante Moore or whoever they end up picking in the draft next year. That's Arizona. Second loser, Jacksonville Jaguars. And obviously they're a good team last season, 13 wins. Obviously picked them to win, not win, but make the Super Bowl last year. So obviously felt like last year's roster was good, and they had a foundation to kick on from. But they lose Devin Lloyd in free agency, they lose Travis Etienne, and now they kind of bargain bin with Chris Rodriguez from Washington in free agency. They don't draft a running back in this draft at all, like not even in like a late round, just to say that we did one. Or they take a linebacker in the 7th round, which I feel like with the impact that Devin Lloyd had at a potential depoy candidacy level, like at points last season, and then a lot of your picks, like your Nate Burkhardt in the 2nd, your Albert Regis, who was pick in the 3rd, could have easily been in the 5th. These are all according to consensus and mocks, but like that is what has been a good benchmark in recent years. So to say that you're just going to reach on the vast majority of your picks, especially the ones at the higher level of the draft, you just look at it and you say, I don't know. There's a bit of a question mark with how you're kind of building out this roster and filling the holes that have been made by players leaving and walking out the door. So I just look at the Jacksonville Jaguars and seeing, with how the Texans did in the draft and how their defense looks like it's even getting better than it was last season. And even the Colts, right? Like heck, before that Daniel Jones injury, like they were the best offense, one of the best offenses historically, and they're running it back, and knock on wood, those players stay fit. Like the Colts could be a real threat, and the Titans are still. The Titans I don't think are going to be up there contending at the division just yet. But even then, like you draft Nate Burkhardt, the Titans draft Anthony Hill. So you could be looking in the next couple of years saying, we lost Lloyd. The Titans have Anthony Hill, and we could have drafted him. And yeah, Nick Booker is obviously a great blocking tight end, showed that at A&M. But you could have had your Devin Lloyd replacement and have kicked on when you already have Brendan Strange. You draft Tanner Koziel in the 5th, which is perfectly fine. Like you could have just had that be your tight end core, and then have the linebacker to be your Devin Lloyd replacement. So I just look at Jacksonville and be like, I don't know. We could look back in a year or two and say they could have done a bit more with the picks that they had in the 2026 draft. But that's the way I see it. I think Arizona, Jacksonville, and not really a mention, but for the Dolphins, I don't think they're losers. But yeah, Arizona and Jacksonville, I definitely would put as my 2026 draft losers. And that's this episode for the DNP podcast. Thank you for tuning in. That was my draft winners and losers. Do you agree? Is there another team that you would say had a really good draft, or would you say I should have singled out a team in the NFC South that had the best draft? Or was I too harsh on the Jags and the Cardinals? Is there another team that should be the losers? Is there a team in the winners that should be a loser? I don't know. Let me know. That's why we have opinions. That's why we discuss. But yeah, again, thanks for tuning in. Available Spotify, YouTube, and our podcast. So yeah, any other episodes, there's a backlog, YouTube, all that good stuff. You know what I mean. And everyone have a good weekend. I'll see you later. Bye bye.